For Stacy, what are some of the areas where the most judgment or interpretation are necessary?
Sure, that's a great question. I think one of the key ones, we've talked about briefly earlier is this concept of variable consideration. So when we talk about variable consideration in the standard, it could be things like concessions or discounts, rebates, even some kind of uncertainty, like in certain industries. I know if you talk about construction, for example, sometimes there may be either an additional payment or a penalty if something's not done on time and so forth. That can be an example of variable consideration. So this standard does require that you deploy, one of two methodologies, either kind of the most likely amount or the expected amount in terms of evaluating what the likely consideration will be. And obviously including that in the arrangement consideration at the inception of the arrangement. So that clearly is one that requires a significant amount of judgment, and that judgment can change over time, and those estimates and so forth would change over time. There are some specific requirements in there, so obviously go through there. There is a constraint on that. You wouldn't want to recognize revenue if you thought that there would be a cumulative reversal of revenue, so that's one of the constraints there, but that does require judgment. There is also some judgment required in developing standalone selling prices for the deliverables. So for many companies we talked about before that are currently using a best estimate of selling price methodology for their revenue, they may be fairly familiar with this process. For others, I know we deal a lot with a lot of technology companies who historically never had to come up with a standalone selling price for licenses, for perpetual licenses or on-premise licenses. This standard does require that companies do that now, and so that poses a set of issues in terms of how you estimate it and if you're selling those licenses at different amounts to different customers. There's also a concept of a material right, so if you're granting a customer an option to purchase additional goods or services in the future, and that option is priced at a significant discount, for an incremental discount from what you're offering other customers, you may have to defer some of the revenue in the arrangement currently as a material right. And so what the standard is trying to get at there is that you're really, by them entering into the contract today, you're giving them a discount on future products, so some of that arrangement consideration should be spread to that additional purchase that happens in the future. But there is some judgment there about not only the value of that material right, but whether or not the customer is going to exercise that option. That goes into the original arrangement consideration. So I would say those are some of the big ones, but I would say this standard, unlike today's standard, even when we started this, it does incorporate a number of valuation principles and in some cases probability that is not that's not currently part of today's gap with respect to revenue recognition.